This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Ngunnawal people. We acknowledge their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. The Run Bitch Run podcast is dedicated to the women in Australia that are taken from us every year due to intimate partner and gender-based violence. The attitudes of men in this country towards women paints a very ugly picture. Fervent denial of gender inequality, victim blaming, and the instant dismissal of abuse claims when a woman steps forward all contribute to the culture of violence that we bear witness to every single day. This podcast aims to help women spot the red flags before it's too late. When we see the signs, we can break the cycle. Before we dive into today's episode, I do want to acknowledge that some of the topics discussed may be triggering or difficult for some people to hear. If you or someone you know and care about is affected by intimate partner violence or abuse, please consider reaching out for help. You are most definitely not alone. Hello. Welcome back. It is episode 3 of the Run Bitch Run podcast. You might notice a slight difference in audio quality, and that is because I invested in a different microphone. So previously I was using the Blue Yeti, which was actually a red Blue Yeti, funnily enough. But I was using that, and I bought that like 4 or 5 years ago now. So I definitely needed an upgrade, and I found a very good deal on a Rode microphone. So if you notice that the audio has been slightly upgraded, I'm not saying it's like substantially different, but if you have noticed a subtle change, that is because I have invested in another microphone. So yay for me. Very happy about that. Feels like it has a pop filter on it. So it feels like, for anyone that knows sound engineering and stuff, that makes me feel very professional. Anyway, moving forward, I am going through a breakup. That's right. I just was like, you know what? I'm going to vent about it on the podcast because that is the one thing that I have to my benefit is a space where I can do that. So yes, unfortunately, I and my now ex-partner and I decided to de-escalate our relationship, and that's fine. That's fine. That is just a part of being poly that I love, frankly. No, I'm actually quite sad about it, but I am processing. And if the word de-escalation doesn't make a lot of sense to you, that is also totally fine. I think I'm going to do like a really cool kind of informative podcast on polyamory, maybe dispelling like some of the more common sort of rumors and myths and like misconceptions around polyamory. Because I think that there is sort of a narrative that gets thrown around on dating apps and, on the internet in general that poly people are one way, when I think that it's quite, well, for one thing, we're not a monolith, but if, that everybody's different, but poly people are probably not like ethically poly people, I should say. Anyway, I'll get into that in a later episode. I'm not going to go too deep into that at the moment, but yes, I am currently going through a breakup. Feel free to send me either on the Instagram or wherever you may so choose. Links are in my description. Feel free to send me breakup advice. I had a therapy session with my, thankfully I get therapy through work, which is big slay because I don't have to pay for it. I had a great little therapy session the same week that the breakup happened, and my therapist, who is this lovely older woman who gives me like really cool auntie kind of vibes, she basically said to me that especially in, traditional monogamy, but in any relationship, you do have a lot of traditions, and they're always positive traditions like engagements and getting married and the first baby and all these like other little things that you celebrate, like you throw an engagement party when you get engaged, you throw like a rehearsal dinner for your wedding, like there's like traditions, right? But there isn't really that for breakups. And so she kind of encouraged me to have more of a sort of like strategic or structured way to process a breakup that makes me feel good and fills my cup. And so I went straight onto the internet and tried to find the hit 1996 film Biodome with Pauly Shore, because I fucking love that movie. It is insane, like very not PC, just truly a product of its time. And funnily enough, the only place I could actually find it living in Australia to watch is SBS On Demand. And I don't think I've ever been recommended to watch anything ever on SBS On Demand, but let alone, apparently, Pauly Shore is on SBS On Demand in the 1996 film Biodome. So I used to have, apart from that, I used to have kind of more of a thing I would do, funnily enough, when I was monogamous. It's like I've totally forgotten that I actually should do something nice for myself in breakups with poly, and I just kind of dwell on it now for some reason and just try and like figure out what I've learned from that relationship more so than like making myself feel good. And as I said before, filling my cup. So I used to get KFC potato and gravy, like a large tub. That was something my sister used to do, and I kind of took that from her as well. And I would get, that was like the first one. That was when I was like younger and going through breakouts. My go-to was a big tub of KFC potato and gravy. Can't really do that now because your girl has IBS. But I then transitioned later on in life to when I was in like my early 20s. I started doing a cheesy mite scroll from Baker's Delight and a bubble tea. Why are all my routines around food? Don't know, might have something to do with that being a vice of mine, but we can dive into that another day. And I think that I kind of just, after that, I just sort of stopped doing nice things for myself. I don't know why that is. I can probably deep dive more into therapy with that, but yeah, I just, apart from watching things on Netflix I like, that's kind of it. So I'm trying to start implementing more of a productive routine, doing nice things for myself. For me, that's kind of focusing on the podcast. So at the date I'm recording this is the 12th of the 4th, and it is April the 12th. I kind of anticipated I'd be able to put this out a little bit earlier. However, the breakup happened. I got a bit sad, and then I'm also prepping to go to Melbourne for the first time next weekend. As you guys know, I'm from Townsville. I moved to Mackay and then I moved to Canberra, and I've been here for 10 years. And for some reason, I've just never gone to Melbourne. I've been to Adelaide once, which was fucking awesome, but I've just never been to Melbourne. Isn't that hilarious? It's like, I feel like there's so many people that naturally go between like capital cities. Like, even when I say it out loud, it does feel a bit silly. Like I've had 10 years of my life to just take a little trip. It's like a 3-hour plane ride, and I've just never been fucked to do it. Or I think I've just never had a reason to do it. In saying that, I do have family there, so it's a bit shame. I probably should have gone sooner. But anyways, I think that that's going to help with the breakup as well. Kind of getting out of Canberra for a bit, going to Melbourne, spending some time with my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful soon-to-be husband, seeing my family down there. And we're taking the dogs, which is going to be the first big road trip with the dogs. So I am nervous, but I am excited. And I think that they're excited. I think they can kind of pick up on something. Will we definitely be giving them anti-anxiety medication starting next week before the lead up to going away? Yes. But I think that they're in some way excited, or at least I'm just trying to like manifest that they are excited and put my excitement onto them. So yes, there are positive things happening while I am also going through a bit of a sad time. But rest assured, I'm pulling through. And if you do have any ideas for breakup routines, I genuinely would appreciate that, because I do love Biodome, but a girl can only watch it so many times. And also, I don't want to eat my feelings, I think, as much as I have been previously. Along with the shit that's going on in my life, there's been a whole lot of shit going on the internet, especially the Addis Paul, Anna Paul, Michaela Tester, Veruca Salt drama. In saying that, I know it's not drama. It's actually very fucking serious. Addis Paul, disgusting little gremlin goblin of a man. I think we've known this. Very good that he's been officially, charged with at least one crime. and can't wait to see him getting charged with many, many more. And if you're still Team Anna in this situation, despite anything that you think that Michaela or Veruca have done in the past, there's actually no excuse for supporting a rapist, whether or not that's your brother. I just, there's more than enough evidence out there for her to see the truth for what it is. And that is my opinion on that. I think that it's very disgusting that he's managed to get away with this for so long. And I've seen so many TikToks of him, for some reason, at the pharmacy with other young looking women, which there's one thing I've learned in my life, and if the men that you are surrounding yourself with continue to get older and the women they date don't, that's a red flag. That is a massive fucking red flag. And you just frankly should not surround yourself with men that do that, because most of the time they are fetishizing young women. And it's not okay. And he's also a rapist. He's just the worst, honestly. The shit that he's done, the shit that Michaela and Veruca will probably continue to expose about him, continues to just be horrible. So justice absolutely for Mick and her fiance. Maxwell, I think his name was. He is honestly loving the way that he's come to her defense. I think that he is standing up and being a real man, as they say. I hate that phrase, but he's standing up for his woman, which I think is very admirable. And I don't think Paul would ever do that if the situations were flipped. Also, I think everyone wants Glenn's opinion. Are we going to hear Glenn's opinion? I don't think so. And if you're listening to this and thinking, what the fuck are you talking about? Who are these people? God bless you, honestly. I'm jealous of the life that you lead. I unfortunately am deep in the rabbit hole. And you know what I say, unfortunately, it consumes my time. It keeps me interested. I love to see people getting taken down when they're literally a rapist and also somewhat a pedophile. And I actually gave them the benefit of the doubt a few years ago. I didn't kind of know what side to believe, because they were very good at fucking manipulating the situation. As Mick said, she's apologized for all of the stuff that she did back then, where she didn't believe the victim either. And I am so much on a different wavelength these days. I think that women, largely, for the most part, we should believe all women, because things like this happen, and you realize that even though you didn't hear about it going to court and everything, she was telling the truth the whole time. And I think there's a lesson in there for everyone to potentially believe women when they come out with this shit, because statistically they're not fucking lying. Maths is over as well. Thank fuck that's over. I'm not sure if anyone else was listening to the Abby Chatfield recaps. I think they were quite popular though, enough for her to hopefully do another season. It was quite entertaining, not gonna lie. But thankfully it's fucking over now, because Jesus Christ, I do kind of feel with maths, and sometimes even like Love Island towards the end, it just really drags on. Like, it actually could be so much shorter. Love Rhea and Jeff. If you guys are watching maths, then you'll know who Rhea and Jeff are. Love them. I have nothing to say about Jackie and Ryan, because they're both, they're both characters. They are both definitely people. And who else did I love? Jamie. Love Jamie. Love Cleo. Love Athena. All the usual suspects, honestly. And Dave disappointed me. I think he disappointed quite a few people. Adrian just sucks. Elliot, yeah, you're fine, I suppose. Not great. Who else? Doesn't even matter, because it's over. I'm just so glad it's over for another year. But I know for a fact, as soon as next season I get the promos on my little television screen, I'm going to be fucking excited for it again. But I tell you what, they better change a significant amount of like policies, procedures and stuff behind the scenes, because the way they did it this year was just not very ethical. We saw like the DV from Paul, that was just unacceptable, frankly. And we saw like just the way that there was so much aggression from men, and even like the passive aggression like we saw from Adrian. I did a video on my TikTok about the specific scene where Adrian exhibited symptoms, where he exhibited signs of DAVO abuse, which is deny, attack, reverse victim offender. You can go see that video on my TikTok, and I might also, if I remember, to link it in the description to this video if you're interested. But he's a classic textbook manipulator, abuser, just not worth anyone's time, frankly. And I'm excited for him to be irrelevant in a short amount of time. But yes, very interesting season all in all. I think that they definitely upped the ante in terms of drama, but not all of it was drama. Some of it was actual very real abuse, and it's not okay to have that handled the way that they handled it. I'm talking about producers, executive management teams, things like that. So I hope for significant change. I hope that we also get a Love is Blind Australia season at some point. I think that would be really fucking awesome. I think Love Triangle, if you've seen the ads for that, I've seen the first season, which I actually quite liked the first season in my opinion, but I think that what the people who watch MAFS, I think what we actually want is Love is Blind, because that seems to produce a lot of really genuine couples in a way that feels a lot less forced, like they're building up to the marriage, they're not immediately thrown into the marriage, and it's all about not seeing them but still building a connection before you see them rather than just showing up on your wedding day. Anyway, I think that it could be super interesting, like a lot more interesting, because like there's that Josh Maths funny guy. He has funny content, but he kind of spoils it, which is fine, but he goes around and he like can find where they are for their weddings because it's all in public. And if we did Love is Blind, it would all be behind closed doors, and then we wouldn't really know anything. I just think that they'd be able to keep it under wraps a little bit easier. Not saying that if there's abuse going on that they should keep it under wraps, but in a perfect world where everything is ethical and fine, I think that would really be a fucking awesome show to watch. I do kind of enjoy the US ones, but Australian culture is just so different. The UK season was also really good, but Australian one would fucking slap. So if anyone's hearing me, please, Love is Blind Australia, give it to me right now. Finally, I know everyone's real fucking sick of hearing it, but the election has been called for May 3rd. And I just want to kind of mention that because while the time is closed for people to update their address and change their address with the Australian Electoral College, you can just be getting ready, honestly, for the election, researching the people that you want to put into power or want to keep in power. And just if you are somebody that cares about your community or the people around you and, you know, Medicare and housing, please consider putting Greens first, Labor second, and Liberal last. And I won't harp on about that too much. I think maybe closer to the election I will. But honestly, it's going to be a really interesting election. It might get into being a hung parliament. I said hung jury then, that is a different thing. But hung parliament just basically means, I think, if I'm using the right term, we don't have a like majority government. We will have a minority government, which is going to be very interesting for dealing with things like the tariffs and dealing with Donald Trump specifically, but also just the world, the state affairs. I think that it would be a very interesting position for Australia to move away from the two-party preferred system, or is it two-party politically anyway, you know what I mean, two-party preferred system. I think realistically in 2025 we are sort of a three-party preferred system with the amount of people that vote Greens, but if you want to vote Teal, vote independent, absolutely do so. I think there's a lot of really fucking great candidates that are independents as well, and there's a lot of meaningful change that can come out of electing those officials as well. So the main thing, do your research, but if you care about the environment, if you care about reproductive rights, if you care about just women in general, if you care about trans people, if you care about anything that's not massive corporations and billionaires, please consider putting Liberals last. And thank you. That's my yap. Now, I think we will get into the topic at hand. And at the end, I am going to finish up with a very fun little story about something that happened to me this week. And about a guy I was talking to and was hoping to go on a date with, who turned out to be racist. So I'm going to put that at the end because it's really funny and I want you to have an excuse to listen to the whole thing. So yes, without further ado, we're going to learn today about social isolation, how that is a part of coercive control, and what it looks like when it reaches an extreme and becomes modern slavery. When we talk about abusive relationships, a lot of people immediately jump to physical violence, bruises, broken things, loud, explosive arguments. But the reality is, abuse isn't always loud, and sometimes it's so quiet, so subtle that even the person experiencing it doesn't realize what's happening until it's too late. In this episode, we're going to deep dive into 3 deeply interconnected but not often discussed forms of abuse: social isolation, coercive control, and modern slavery. At a glance, these sound like separate issues, but they can overlap in terrifying ways, creating a trap that's increasingly more difficult to escape from. Social isolation isn't just a feeling of genuine loneliness. It's often been manufactured deliberately to make you feel that way. It's a tool, a tactic, if you will, used by abusers to alienate you from your support system, make you doubt yourself, and build a world where the abuser is the only remaining constant in your life. Coercive control takes us just a bit further. With coercive control, it's about domination, rules, surveillance, often silent punishment for stepping out of line. It's a slow but meticulous erosion of freedom and autonomy, often invisible from the outside. And when that control becomes the most extreme, when your freedom, work, or body is controlled or exploited without your full, informed consent, it enters the realm of modern slavery. Victims of modern slavery are often vulnerable immigrants who have relocated to a new country without their social network or support system. This type of abuse can manifest in various ways, such as using financial control, physical threats, or manipulation of one's immigration status. For example, withholding visas, threatening deportation, or isolating the victim from legal or language support. It also often involves forcing individuals to work without compensation, compelling them to engage in non-consensual acts, and living in a constant state of fear. These forms of abuse don't exist in a vacuum. They build on each other. They reinforce each other, and they're happening every single day right here in Australia. In this episode, I want to explore how these tactics show up in modern relationships, how to recognize the signs, and how we can all be a part of breaking the cycle. According to the New South Wales government website, coercive control can involve any behaviour which scares, hurts, isolates, humiliates, harasses, monitors, takes away another person's freedom, or unreasonably controls their day-to-day activities. It can include physical violence and sexual abuse, but it doesn't have to. In a lot of cases, the first sign of coercive control is subtle social isolation. Unlike gaslighting and love bombing, social isolation in relationships can be legally recognised as a form of coercive control. In September 2023, the Australian government introduced the National Principles to Address Coercive Control in Family and Domestic Violence. These principles aim to establish a shared understanding of coercive control and to try and guide consistent responses nationwide. As of April 2025, this is where each Australian state and territory sits on this matter. In New South Wales, as of July 2024, engaging in coercive control against a current or former intimate partner is a criminal offence, carrying a maximum penalty of 7 years imprisonment. In Queensland, the state government is set to criminalise coercive control from the 26th of May 2025. The legislation will recognise patterns of abusive behaviour designed to control or dominate a partner, even in the absence of physical violence. In Tasmania, there are some existing laws that address certain behaviours associated with coercive control, such as economic and emotional abuse. However, comprehensive legislation specifically targeting coercive control as a distinct offence is still under consideration. In Victoria, they are exploring the introduction of specific coercive control offences. The state government has initiated consultations and reviews to assess the best approach to legislate against this form of abuse. In South Australia, they are examining the issue of coercive control and considering potential legislative responses. Public consultations have been conducted to gather insights on how best to address this form of abuse. And finally, in Western Australia, the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory, those jurisdictions are in various stages of reviewing and considering the criminalisation of coercive control. While specific legislation has not yet been enacted, discussions and consultations are ongoing to determine appropriate legal responses. While it might seem obvious when someone is completely cut off from the outside world, in reality, it often begins subtly and escalates in a way that can feel almost natural and justified in the moment. In the early stages, social isolation can be disguised as love, concern, or protection. It might look like, I just want us to spend more time together. Your friends don't really understand you like I do. Your family stresses you out. Let's take a break from them. On the surface level, these comments don't sound threatening. In fact, they even feel quite caring or flattering. But this is the problem. Isolation begins small, seemingly unreasonable boundaries or preferences. Your partner might start subtly criticizing your friends and family, expressing jealousy when you spend time with anyone that's not them, asking you to cancel plans just this once so you can stay with them. And then all of a sudden they offer to take over your communication. I'll call them for you. Don't worry about replying. I'll handle it. As time passes, the tactics intensify. What once seemed like genuine concern becomes controlling. Maybe you're discouraged or outright forbidden from contacting certain people. Maybe your phone, messages, or social media are monitored or restricted. You're made to feel guilty for maintaining outside relationships with your partner, citing, "Why do you need anyone else when you have me?" Invitations to social events might be sabotaged or just completely intercepted. And then finally, you just stop reaching out to people because the drama it causes isn't fucking worth it. Eventually, your world shrinks. You find yourself isolated in a number of ways. Physically, maybe you're living in a remote place or you're being driven everywhere. Emotionally, you're second-guessing yourself constantly, or even digitally, and having your internet access limited or surveilled. Over time, this isolation becomes a cage that's too hard to even recognize and name because it was built so gradually, so meticulously by your abuser. Without access to support, victims can begin to doubt their own experiences, and being gaslit is almost always a given. There's no one around you to validate your concerns, no one to challenge your abuser's narrative. Before you realize it, you've become the most dependent on your abuser, not just practically, but emotionally and psychologically. With all of this in mind, it's no wonder why so many women can't see the abuse clearly for what it is, let alone be able to leave what is often such a volatile environment. Once coercive control has taken hold, the person experiencing it often finds themselves complying with things that they never thought that they would. Not because they want to, obviously, but because the alternative feels worse or is just simply unavailable to them. It becomes less about choice and more about survival, and this is where the line between control and exploitation starts to blur. When someone is isolated, dependent, and fearful, they become vulnerable to being used, whether it's for their labour, their body, or even just their continued silence. These dynamics are deeply oppressive, regardless of whether physical or sexual violence is involved. And in some cases, what begins as emotional control can transform into a system of entrapment called modern slavery. Modern slavery, also known as contemporary slavery or neo-slavery, refers to institutional slavery that continues to occur in the present day. Across the globe, estimates of the number of enslaved people today range from about 38 million to 49.6 million people. But because there is no universally agreed definition of modern slavery, those in slavery are often difficult to identify, and therefore adequate statistics are often not available. The Australian government's website, modernslavery.gov.au, defines this as follows: when someone is forced to work, marry, or do other things through coercion, like manipulation, control, or violence, threats, or lies, it takes away someone's freedom to make choices for themselves. Modern slavery has many forms, including human trafficking, slavery and slavery-like practices such as forced labour, and forced marriage. As per the Anti-Slavery Australia website, anyone can be vulnerable to modern slavery. However, some groups are more vulnerable than others. Women and children, people on temporary visas, backpackers, international students, people seeking asylum, migrants on limited working visas are particularly vulnerable. In 2021 alone, Anti-Slavery Australia helped over 400 people who had been trafficked to or from Australia, or who had faced modern slavery while in Australia, including forced marriage, servitude, and forced labour. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. In Australia, only 1 in 5 victims of slavery are identified. That means that 80% of victims do not get the support that they need and remain in slavery in Australia. And this means that the cases we see are likely to be a small proportion of the scale of modern slavery in Australia. Now that you know what modern slavery is, how can you tell if something isn't right? Let's start with the workplace. If someone's working incredibly long hours for little to no pay, that's a red flag. Especially if they don't seem free to leave, or if someone else is holding onto their passport or visa. Maybe they live where they work and are told that they'll be evicted if they quit. They might avoid eye contact, seem anxious, or just let someone else do all the talking. We see this often in the sex work industry, but also industries like agriculture, construction, cleaning, and hospitality. I also want to highlight that due to the prevalence of modern slavery cases occurring in the workplace, there are now requirements for large businesses to step up. In Australia, the Modern Slavery Act of 2018 requires businesses with over $100 million in annual revenue to report on the risks of modern slavery in their operations and supply chains. These companies have to submit a modern slavery statement every year, detailing how they're identifying and addressing exploitation, whether that's in the factories producing their goods or in the services that they outsource. These reports are then made public through the Modern Slavery Statements Register, which is run by the Attorney General's Department. That means anyone can access them, including everyday regular consumers like you and I. That's great, but here's the thing. There has been strong criticism that the threshold is just too high. A 2023 statutory review of the Act recommended lowering the bar for annual revenue to $50 million, which would bring thousands more businesses into that reporting framework. The idea for this is simple. Exploitation does not just happen at the top, and smaller companies should not be off the hook. There were also calls from the same statutory review to introduce penalties for companies that fail to comply, because right now, unfortunately, there are no fines for businesses that submit poor quality reports or just ignore the requirement altogether. So while the Act is a step in the right direction, many advocates say it just needs more teeth if it's really going to drive any kind of change. In personal or domestic settings, modern slavery might look like someone being forced to cook, clean, or care for others without being paid or without really being allowed to say no. It could be someone stuck in a relationship where their immigration status is being used as leverage, or where they're constantly threatened with deportation. In some instances, it can involve forced marriage where someone is tricked or pressured into a marriage that they do not consent to. Not to mention physical and sexual violence or assault. Sometimes it's more about the behaviour than the setting. Someone might seem constantly afraid, withdrawn, or unsure about where they are or even who they work for. They may not have their own money, phone, or even a form of ID. And if they're always accompanied by someone who does all the talking, then that is worth paying attention to. There are also contextual clues, like overcrowded or unsafe housing, people being moved around a lot with no clear reason, or workers who don't have a proper contract and can't name their employer. At the end of the day, if something feels off, trust your gut. Even if you're not sure, saying something could make all the difference. However, please listen, and this is so crucial, do not confront the person that you suspect is in control. Okay? That can put not only you, but the victim themselves in a significant amount of danger. In situations like this, you should always be careful that any actions you take do not harm a victim or survivor of modern slavery. Never publicly disclose personal information without informed consent. In emergencies, where there is immediate danger or where the situation involves a child, call 000 000. Anti-Slavery Australia can provide access to free and confidential legal and migration advice to anyone in modern slavery. Call 02 9514 8115 or visit www.antislavery.org.au. And to report modern slavery in Australia, you can call the Australian Federal Police on 131 237 or report through their website www.afp.gov.au. This week, I don't have a exact kind of story to tell you that relates to experiences I've been through when it comes to specifically modern slavery. I think thankfully I've never been exposed to that kind of dynamic, I suppose. But I have been exposed to what it feels like when someone socially isolates you. And I wanted to kind of touch on that, but I think because I've blocked out so much from that relationship, and this is the relationship I touched on in the last episode. If you haven't listened to episode 2, the love bombing episode, I basically go into what my ex-partner, the dynamic that was sort of how that started, I suppose, how that relationship started. It's quite complex. So I've even had friends say to me after listening to the podcast that they didn't realize how complex it was and how bad it was. So I think if you haven't listened to that one, go listen to that before listening to this so that you can kind of have the backstory. But regardless, when I was in that relationship, so this was around COVID, from 2020 to 2020, well, kind of from the end of 2019 to 2021, I was with my ex. I think I just chose to refer to him as abusive ex in the last episode, so we'll just say that. He really just didn't enjoy me having male friends. I have quite a few of them. I've always been really comfortable around boys that I went to school with generally, like especially in primary school. I always gravitated towards having boys as friends, especially in high school as well. So I don't know. I think I'm just one of those kinds of people that I surround myself with people of all different genders and presentations and whatever. So I don't think I would ever ask someone, if the situation was flipped, I don't think I'd ever ask, or I don't think I ever have asked a guy to cut off his like female friends. I think the most I've probably said is, maybe be more mindful and don't flirt with them if they, we're together, when, I was monogamous. So this abusive ex, I think that he just kind of really was quite insecure, as is probably very evident in what I've told of him so far. but I think that he just really would cling on to like the smallest things and really blow them up. So for one instance, I mentioned the word, let's just say the word relationship. I used the word relationship to describe the relationship I had with a friend of mine. I didn't mean it in a dating way. I just meant like how I have a relationship with my mom. I have a relationship with, my coworkers. They're not romantic relationships, but I was just explaining to him at one point at the start of our relationship, because he had asked me what was the nature of the relationship with this person. I said the nature of this relationship was XYZ. And, fuck me, apparently using that word, wrong word to use, because later on down the line, he was really insecure about this guy. And the guy was somebody that I had been seeing when I was poly in the relationship previous to the one with my abusive ex. And it was someone that I had slept with before, but I was monogamous at this point in my life. I've never cheated on someone. I absolutely had no intention of doing that. But I do think that I am quite able to maintain friendships with people even if I've slept with them. In fact, I've had sex with a few of my friends, and it's honestly not a big deal, especially if you're in the non-monogamous space, but it's just honestly not a big deal, and it never really has been to me, which I will probably go into in a later episode when I do the stuff on non-monogamy and jealousy, things like that. But to me personally, not a big deal. I wasn't asking to have conversations with this man that were sexual in nature, purely just friends because we live in the same, town. I think at one point even I saw him in person, like just on the street or something, and that caused a massive, argument. All because I'd said that I had a relationship with him, which I just don't know why my abusive ex hyperfixated on that. Like I said, have relationships with everyone. But because I'd said specifically I had a relationship with him, I had to say, not a dating relationship, just a friendship. And it honestly was just so toxic, and that was one of many incidences, but like I said, I've blocked out quite a few of them. And that was one of many instances where I felt uncomfortable even broaching the subject of having male friends, and it just honestly became easier not to. It became so much easier to not give out, if I made a new friend at work, I wasn't going to add them on Facebook. I wasn't going to add them on Instagram, because it would just cause tension. So that is kind of the main one I remember from my previous relationship with that abusive ex. The story I told in episode 1 about gaslighting, well, that episode was about gaslighting. The story I told was kind of to get the pod started, and it was more so just around my first abusive relationship when I was about 16, 17. And with that one, I think I've blocked out so much of it as well. Like, I think that there was definitely the vibe that I wasn't allowed to have male friends. Like, I wasn't allowed to really have good friends at all that were men. And I had, like I said, quite a few from school at that point. And that was, really hard because I wasn't allowed to form close friendships or get closer with those men. And that's just really sad. That's just really sad, in my opinion. But I don't have a lot of other direct stories. So I am going to now go into the story about the really weird thing that happened to me this week with someone that I was texting. Okay, so just want to also apologize. As I'm recording this, I'm realizing that I, for some reason, have insane vocal fry at the moment. It is in the afternoon now that I'm recording this, so bear with me. Apologies for that. But yes, this week, to correct myself, it was last week. I decided to take a bold step and say, fuck it. I'm going to finally give my number to someone that I have been flirting with, that he's somebody that comes into my work to do just regular maintenance work as a tradie, and he's somebody that's come in just intermittently over the past 6 to 8 months, maybe even longer than that, to do things in the place where I work. And so obviously, it being the place that I work, I've not really ever really wanted to kind of extend it beyond flirting, but I've recently, I think there's been a noticeable increase in in the flirting. So I took that as a sign. And I've been feeling a little bit, connection starved lately. There's obviously the breakup that happened. This did happen before the breakup. So love that for me. But I just wanted to, I just said, fuck it. So I gave him my number. He was more than happy to receive. And it is always risky when you're giving someone your number and you're poly, because you never know if they're going to text you and find out and then just ignore you or ghost you, which has happened to me before. But this, I did basically say, hey, I'm poly. Do you still want my number? He said yes. So I was like, it's on like fucking Donkey Kong. And then we started texting immediately, which was very, very nice. I am 28. I found out that he was 24, and usually I set, if I'm on dating apps, which I am, decided to jump back on Field recently. If I'm on dating apps, I kind of set it from like 24 to upwards of wherever. I don't really have a top age range. But I think I'm starting to realize they're just not doing it for me. I think we need to go higher. I think we need to start at maybe like 26. And the reason I say that is because there was just little things that I was picking up on, just like little things where there was like a mismatch of, I suppose, I don't want to say maturity, like it makes me sound like a dickhead, but there were definitely mismatches in, let's say, priorities. And then, classic ordeal where the communication drops off, there's less interest, yada, yada. So I had basically been saying, let's catch up, let's get a drink. He was not so keen, which I'm not going to like fight for your attention. So if I ask you like 2 times, maybe 3, and you're still giving me basically nothing, that's it. Like, you fucked your chance. I'm not going to come back after that. So at this point, he was already being a bit kind of, a little bit not so communicative, like I said before. So I was already sort of in the mindset of, well, this probably isn't going to go anywhere. He's clearly not that interested. Anyways, I get a Snapchat from him. Yes, a Snapchat, obviously, that could be considered a red flag. I know people always say to me, Audrey, men should not be on Snapchat. You should not be on Snapchat. It's for the children. And I say, maybe it's not. It has really good filters. And then these things happen. Anyway, he sent me a Snapchat and it was a video. And I thought, great, we love this communication. Maybe this will be, him answering any of the questions he's ignored that I've asked. And it was him telling me a story about how he had done a call out to a location, and there was a woman there who was like his point of contact, who had made the call, and he was doing work for her. And when he described this woman, I picked up really quickly that he mentioned that her race was Indian, and clearly nothing wrong with that. The issue I have is that coming up because it's front of your mind for any reason? It's odd for people. I personally don't jump to race when I'm describing someone if it has nothing to do with the story. So I was clearly like, okay, I'm going to pin this because there's a potential that he's about to make a really you just know when someone's about to just make a real fucked comment, right? Like when race just comes into the equation, you're like, well, what are we going to do with this, So I pinned that and I kept watching. And towards the end, he ended up making a comment. And again, I'm not going to get into the specific comment for what it was, but the implication was Indian woman equals curry. That was the implication. And it was disgusting in context, for one. But I won't explain that, just to remove any sort of identifiers. But it was just disgusting in that, why do you feel the need? Like, why do you feel the need? Why? And so I was immediately disgusted, as I would have been if he'd made any similar comment towards any other race. And I basically said to him, yeah, that's not it, Chief. The casual racism, not it for me. And I deleted him immediately off Snapchat. And that is kind of where I thought it would end. But he got a little bit butthurt, didn't he? So then I get a text message from him because I didn't bother to delete the text messages or whatever. And it was I'm just reading it off my phone. So he said, and verbatim, I'm going to read it without correcting any of the errors that he made because it's funnier that way. Hey, saw you unfriend me. That's all right that you did. Sorry that if I made you uncomfortable, and I didn't mean any disrespect towards anyone. Was dipping my toes in a bit. I don't suspect you to reply at all. I hope you have a great day. So, a couple of things in that. Obviously, he meant expect me to reply, not suspect me to reply. But I don't think he clearly doesn't understand what the problem is if he's saying, sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I don't know if it's me that you should be concerned about being uncomfortable or the person that you were making a racist comment about. I also feel like saying dipping my toes in a bit. What the fuck? What the fuck? Dipping your toes into what? Racism? Yeah, not on, bud. Not on. And I ended up putting on my Instagram story, on my personal Instagram story, I asked my friends to help me decide if I should either have a go at him or make it a learning moment or just never reply at all. And my friends, because they're all very similar to me, very funny cunts, they wanted me to do one or two. I wanted to do a combo of both just because I know for a fact he's going to come in at some point in the next month. So I will now read for you what I said. I feel like it's a bit cringe that I'm doing this, but I think it's funny anyway. And I think people are probably a little bit curious. I said, I'm unsure if you're baiting me or not, but in case you aren't, it was inherently disrespectful. If you were trying to see if I have a dark sense of humor, I do, but I don't feel the need to punch down or make dumb jokes based on overdone stereotypes. You're just being racist. I was hopeful you weren't that kind of tradie, but if the shoe fits, good luck out there, bud. And I knew that he would come back with something because men always love to have the last word every time. So he thumbs it up, which is very poised. Kudos to you. And then he said, not that kind of tradie and certainly not baiting. That video I sent was also sent to a bunch of my mixed mates. My mates and I know when we say these things, it's all in jokes and not actually being racist. People are people and people have feelings that matter. But hey, sorry, got a little bit too comfortable talking to you. Good luck out there too. Thumbs up. So he's very butthurt, clearly. He's bitter. He said, not that kind of tradie. Clearly you are, because tradies obviously tend to have a bit of a more racist, terrible sense of humor and hate women. Anyways, he then goes on to say, that video I sent was sent to a bunch of my mixed mates. Like, mixed race? Or are you just saying, like, what are you saying with that? Are we just saying, like, because it's giving, well, I have a friend that's black. That's what it's giving. Like, I can't be racist because my friend is black. You know what I mean? Like that stereotype. And then he says the thing about my mates and I know when we say these things, it's in all jokes and not actually being racist. Newsflash, microaggressions are still racist. You're still contributing to the culture that says that all Indian people equal curry in some way. Like I said, we'll not tell you the exact context because it's not good. But it's just like, what are we doing here? You know, the bit that he then says about people are people and people have feelings that matter. Well, I was having a lovely day before you ruined it with your racism. So my feelings matter too. Why are we acting like your feelings matter more? And then my favorite bit, hey, sorry, got a little bit too comfortable talking to you. Oh, honey. Did you think that we were besties? I wanted to fuck you. I wanted to have an intimate relationship with you. I wanted to have a connection. Does that mean I wanted to be friends with you? Sure. But we've literally known each other less than a week, and you were trying to test the waters, dip your little toes in to see if I was going to laugh at your stupid racist jokes. In what world does this go well? So, love that. I kind of told myself, meeting people organically is going to be so much better. It's always going to work out because you can really tell what someone's like in person. You can't. It's just as shit, apparently. So, unfortunately, 24-year-old men, you're now striked off the radar. I have to up it. We're kicking you off the list. You're kicking you off the roster. And now I'm lifting it. Maybe I should just lift it to 30, honestly. Just cut my losses at this point. Just cut my losses. Okay, so last episode, you might remember how I read out a listener-submitted story. Shout out to you again, Queen. Thank you so much. And it was about love bombing. And then I mentioned how in this week's episode, I'm going to include part 2 to that, and it is in relation to social isolation. Audrey, in the future, Take it away. That ex was obsessed with keeping me all to himself, completely. The first time he met my friends, 3 guys I had known since high school, he was immediately possessive and jealous. Not because I gave him a reason to be, but because he didn't like that I had close male friends. He made comments about how it was inappropriate, how he didn't trust them, how other people would think it was weird. He wanted me to stop seeing them every week like we always had, or at the very least, he needed to be there. And if he wasn't invited, then I wasn't allowed to go either. At first, I pushed back, but over time, the pressure wore me down. It wasn't worth the arguments, the accusations, the guilt trips. Slowly, I stopped seeing them as much. Then it escalated. He started going through my phone when I wasn't looking, deleting their numbers multiple times. I thought it was some weird phone error at first. I had no idea it was him. He also went through my social media and deleted any guy, whether they were old classmates, co-workers, or even my family members. My friends and family started to notice how toxic he was, but I didn't see it. I had rose-colored glasses on and I was convinced that our relationship was perfect. And when my friends and family did try to warn me, I thought that they were the problem. I thought that they didn't support me, that they didn't want me to be happy. And eventually they stopped trying. They gave up on me. And in doing so, they unknowingly pushed me further into his arms. He became my only person, the only one who understood me, the only one who cared. Until I woke up one day and I realized I had no one else. No friends, no family, no support network. I felt completely alone, and the isolation was suffocating. I was so broken, so drained, that I genuinely believed there was no way out. I was on the verge of ending my own life because I thought I had no one. And then, after everything, after he had taken away my independence, my confidence, and my support system, he sexually assaulted me. And I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't, because by then, he had done exactly what he had set out to do, make sure I had no one left to turn to. I kept it to myself for so long. Only now am I starting to tell people what really happened. Okay, and that is the end of episode 3. Thank you so much for listening. I do feel like I got through this episode without as many ums and ahs and likes, so fuck yes for me. I'm very happy about that. I also think that I'm finally starting to refine the format, like I talked endlessly about in the last episode. I just feel like the first 2 episodes I was sort of getting my bearings and I was sort of figuring my shit out, but now I actually feel like I sort of know what I'm doing. I'm sort of like refining my process a little bit too. So I hope that that is coming through in the way that I'm making the pod. And I hope that you love it. And as always, there is a link in the description if you would like to check out any of the other links. It's my link tree. So there is a YouTube video with every episode. There's an Instagram post with every episode. The YouTube video isn't a filmed video of me recording, unfortunately. It's just for people that are hard of hearing or that want to listen in a different language so they can use closed captions. And the Instagram post is more of just like a fun kind of side, reference image kind of thing that you can look at while you're listening if you want to, or afterwards or beforehand, up to you. So yes, I think thank you. I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else to blabber on about. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe. Rate me 5 stars if you think it's worth that. Rate me whatever you like. Give me comments, give me feedback. I really want to hear it. Constructive criticism is always welcome. If you have any ideas for topics as well, feel free to send them through. There is, if you want to submit guest stories as well, you can submit them written or audio. Instructions are in the link tree. And if you want to, give me feedback, there is a survey link as well. And yes, I think that's it. Okay, we're almost at an hour for the first time ever, which is very exciting. I feel like the podcast keeps getting longer and longer and longer, so love that. But I'm going to stop yapping now, heading to the pub this evening for a steak, so very excited for that, because my period's due soon, and I'm going to need the iron. Anyways, TMI, talk to you later, gals. Bye!